Hey guys, it's Roxy here, and in this video we interview Jane Pooley. She is an experiencer of extraterrestrial contact. She has gone to the ship many times through her life, and she is here today to share her story with us. She's from New South Wales, Australia, and she's just a beautiful person sharing her truth and sharing her experiences. So we hope you find this interview really interesting.
So for me, my first memory, I was a toddler in a cot. So I think I was probably under 2 and maybe like 18 months. And I know most people don't remember that, but this was one of those things that kind of stood out, and I had repeated dreams about it all of my life until they've stopped now that I finally worked out what was going on. So my dream used to be about the man with the cow's eyes coming to visit me, the big brown, because cow's eyes are warm and friendly and black. So they weren't scary. This man was not scary. And so I probably had earlier visits, but I don't remember, because when he came to get me, I knew him. So I must have met him before. And I remember putting my arms up and he'd pick me up. I'm a baby, remember? And he put me on his left hip. It's funny the details that you remember when it's such, trauma's not the right word, but such a abnormal experience. They never leave you. So anyway, put me on his left hip like humans carry children. And we up, and I was happy to go with him like a relative. Babies will go with anyone friendly, let's face it. But I felt like I knew him, even though it's my first memory. And then we went up in this lift, okay, which is a lift or an elevator or a light beam, if you will. And the light was swirling in brick patterns around me. I couldn't see anything in the middle of that light, but I felt like I was floating up in water. So I could still breathe. Wow. So there was something there, even if I couldn't see it. And then in that beam, it goes through the ceiling. And this has happened to me, unless I'm outside, this has happened to me pretty much every time I'm taken. And it goes through the ceiling. And I could see in the ceiling beams. I could see a cockroach. I sneezed. So it's physical. It's not my soul going up there.
Yeah.
And I looked up and I could see a round light in the middle of a big round ship. So I've called that the light hole. We don't have the language for it, so I've had to make it up as I've gone along.
Yeah.
So we floated up into the light hole, and then we stepped on the edge, and then Grandpa Graham, which is his nickname, put me down on the floor, and the light closed over, a bit like the lens of a camera. And then we're in this room, this round silver room made of some sort of metal, but I don't know what. It kind of looked like aluminium, but not really. It looked like mercury, but not really. I mean, maybe it was a mix. I don't know, but some sort of alloy, let's call it that. Perhaps we don't have it on Earth, or we haven't invented it, or whatever. And there were very few controls. I've seen a number of different sized ships, but this one's the middle-sized one, the hospital ship. And he picked me up again. He put me on a levitating table. So it was a flat metal bench that had no legs. And it was freezing. I was really cold, and it's quite dim light. There's a reason for that. I'll get to that. And then he ran his hand over my body like that. There's a microchip in his hand. Okay, that's been explained to me. And in the air was a scan, like an MRI or something, but it looked like a hologram of my organs. Well, I didn't know that as a baby. I just saw all this stuff above me. I now know, looking back, that that's what it was. So it was equivalent, but far advanced to our medical scans. And that's 60 years ago. Yeah. So we're still not there.
So when did you have when did you have the memory of this experience?
I remember that man picking me up all my life. That's the thing that kept coming in my dreams, but I didn't understand what it was.
Right.
Now I know it was a grey alien. Then I just thought it was a relative.
Yeah.
Then I just thought the coloured things light above me like balloons. Now I know it was a scan, right? So it's just, looking back with an adult mind is quite different. So then he put some sort of machine, but a small one, on the left inside crook of my arm. everything's always been on the left side. I don't know why. He said maybe they stand on the left side of the operating table. I don't know, but it just is. And I felt sucking, but not pain. As an adult, I interpret that as he was taking blood, but without a needle, which is okay. We do diabetic stuff like that. But again, decades ago. And then, so it was a medical examination. I now realised, just checking up on me. And then he put me back down the same way, and I went back to sleep. Now, the other thing that I remember is my mother in the bed beside my cot with her back to me, and she didn't wake up. So I have a very clear memory of that.
Yeah, interesting.
They do sedate us.
Yeah.
I don't think they sedated me very much that time, because by sedation, I mean like a light anesthetic or something that we might use as humans. I always try and compare it to what I know, because it's the only way I can explain it. So that was my first experience. And then it's been all of my life. I'm sure I don't remember everything, but I seem to remember a lot. And I think it's my determination to understand. I think it's the fact that the man that picks me up every time is really nice. I've developed quite a good relationship with him, like a grandfatherly relationship.
Yeah.
And I think they like my questions.
Yeah.
They seem to like my questions, or at least be happy to answer them. Now, whether or not they're telling me everything, how would I know? But I get what I get,
Yeah.
So the next time I was 7 or 8, around that birthday, and it was the only time in my life I was frightened, and I knew they were coming. They do communicate telepathically, and I just knew, and I was really frightened because I didn't understand what was going on. An 8-year-old is different to a baby, isn't it?
Yeah.
Psyche was.
Yeah.
And my heart was racing, and I remember calling out for my mother, and I don't think she could hear me. I don't think I was making any sound. I just was in my own head, screaming. And eventually they did come, and I must have gone to sleep, because they put you to sleep as well. And I was up just under the ceiling, not my soul. I've had out-of-body experiences. This was my body about to hit the ceiling. So I screamed again, but the screaming is, I don't think it's audible. I don't think my mother heard me screaming, and I was frozen. But then I heard a voice say, she's not supposed to wake up. And they must have given me more or done whatever they do, because then I went blank to sleep. And that's all I remember of that visit. But that is the absolute only time I was frightened. So, right. And I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
You wake up floating under the ceiling, you're going to be frightened.
And what type of beings do you remember Graham to be? What type of beings? And what do you feel like, where they're from, why they're here?
He was a grey. Yeah, he was a grey. He had the beautiful big eyes. I think they're beautiful. Sometimes when people draw them, they look really ugly. They're not. They've all got different faces like we have, different heights, different personalities. And those eyes are magnificent. Their kindness shines out their eyes. So a grey, as we know it, to me, they're a person, and I'm sure I'm right, a body and a soul just the same as us, same God as us, same spirituality as us, just different culture and different features. So I always like to say that they're no different to us than an Asian woman to me in body type, facial features, or a Negro man to me again. We're different races and different faces, and you and I are both the same race, and we still look completely different. So do they. So they're not robots, like people say. They're not clones. They're not anything. They're just people. And in fact, they're mammals, and they're biologically compatible with us, or they couldn't breed with us. There has to be some medical intervention, but they still have them the same way.
Yeah.
Or could.
Yeah.
They lost their fertility. So why they're there and what happened is that their planet blew up or died off, like ours probably will in the future. We all know that. And just as we're exploring on Mars for a new home, they were out there looking for a new home. They hadn't found one that they could live on. Earth really is beautiful. It really is. We don't appreciate what we've got. and we've got all the resources imaginable. And while I'm sure there are others, it seems to be a favourite of other aliens looking for a home. Sorry, I'm just looking at the cat. And so they want to live here, but they can't live here for more than a few hours. And I don't seem to be able to live without feeling sick on a spaceship for more than a few hours. Excuse me.
Yeah. And I think
I did everything. I opened the door. Yeah.
I think that goes back to the frequency, because Earth is in a third dimensional frequency. It's not what they're used to. They're used to that 4, 5, 6 density, right? So coming down to Earth, it's so contaminated down here. They can only stay for a certain amount of time. And in upside down, when we go up there, it's too overwhelming for our system if we're hanging out in that 5 density for too long. Would you agree with that?
Well, I would agree, but I would use different words. I'm a very feet on the ground sort of practical person. So yes, I agree in theory, but for me, for my interpretation, my perception of what I saw, you know how they're kind of greyish? They're not really grey, they're pasty, bluey grey. In fact, horribly, they're only grey when they're dead. And so their skin's a bit grey, but it's not really. I wouldn't say that. So, and that's because they have less oxygen in what they breathe in. So you know how if a human can't breathe, they're having a heart attack or they've got asthma, they can go blue? Mm-hmm. Well, their normal is less oxygen than ours. So there's practical medical reasons for this too. And so when I'm there for a few hours, I'm not breathing the air that I should be breathing. Mm. I'm not getting enough oxygen. Mm. So when I come back, as soon as I hit my bed, I want to throw up. I have a massive headache. And I'm so cold every single time. I can't get warm. I'm hypothermic. I have to stand under a warm shower for ages. Wow. Because their body temperature is lower than ours. Because I've asked them, I've complained. So can't you put some heat in here? You know what I mean? Humans can't survive in this. And they said, well, we can't survive in your temperatures. So we just have to get through and there's a time limit.
Yeah, right.
So that's what it is. So if they interbreed with us, they're going to be able to live on our planet. They're going to adapt to their environment. Mm. So that's the point. And also they tell me that all of their history, all of their knowledge is on their DNA, like we would have a library. And so they need to preserve their race's DNA. And they can do this, again, by interbreeding with humans. But it's not, I mean, this is where people put their 10 cents worth in. This is not my grandmother had sex with an alien or I had sex with an alien. It's nothing to do with sex, frankly.
No.
It's medical. It's medical.
Yes.
But so we usually still have a human mother and a human father, like normal conception, but they've removed the fetus at about 12 weeks and then again about 20 weeks if it lasts that long. But anyway, they remove it a couple of times while it's in our body, mm-hmm. depending on the development of the fetus. And I haven't seen it because I was on the operating table, but I asked questions and they took the fetus or the baby away and told me that they were splicing their DNA into the baby. So whether they injected into the bloodstream, I've got no idea how they did it. I wish I could have watched. Mm. And then they reimplant the fetus into our uteruses and inject hormones around it, so it takes. So it's really just advanced technology and advanced medicine. Mm. And then they take the baby quite young, you know, around 3 months, can be 4 months. The longest one I had was 5 months, but usually it's around normal miscarriage time, 3 months or under. So people don't always realise. Yeah. So that's the purpose. And I guess the reason you mentioned women more, that's why there's more women. The men, they need the sperm and they still take them. And also I've inherited some alien DNA from my biological father who was also taken. And then my children have to, just by virtue of being my earth children, have inherited my DNA. So they must have some. Yeah. So you can't tell me that human beings aren't aware, that scientists or top politicians aren't aware, because so many people have given their DNA, as you know, for Ancestry or MyHeritage or whatever it is. you know, there's lots of sites. They have to know how many, or at least that a lot of us have alien as well as human DNA. They have to. There's no way they can't.
I agree. Completely agree with that.
So that's the why. And there's this massive mothership that I did go on when I asked a lot of questions and I got them answered. And it's basically an artificial planet inside. Because as I said to you, their planet died off. And while I was really impressed, because Grandpa Graham was giving me the tour, he said it's actually really old. I mean, we kind of have to hurry up because it's aging, but it's advanced for me, right?
Yeah.
So there were many other takings like that. I saw people that I know on Earth. I can 3 or 4. I think there might be this. Anyway, there's 5. There's one that doesn't want to know about it, but people that I've seen on board the ship. So they start us in groups as babies, and then we stay in those groups. And there's usually about 7 or 8 years between each stage. And the big kids look after the little kids, and you get assigned a mentor. So I can remember this girl who may listen to this, and so I won't mention her name, who was a few years younger than me. And I remember holding her hand, and she had a gap in her teeth. And I remember her face, and we loved each other. We played together. I met that woman after I did a TV interview. She came to me online, and I remember her. And I said, your name is blah, blah, blah. It's not the name you're going by. And she thought, oh, it is. And you had a gap in your teeth. She said, I did. And she showed me photographs of when she was little, and it was her. Wow. She knows she's an experiencer.
Yeah.
And then I remember another woman whose hand I held that I looked up to. So they've got it really well organised. So it doesn't surprise me that people on Earth are coming out saying, I saw you.
So
and then there's another woman.
Jane, were those people in your area that you had experiences with that you remember?
This one is. Well, a couple of them are, but one of them's in America. I've never physically met her.
Yeah.
She came to me too. You saw me on TV and said, I know you. Now, I don't remember her, but my every instinct says it's true. I recognise her, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
She says she's seen me a number of times on the ship, and we're exactly the same age. So not necessarily, but you've got to remember distance is nothing for them. And we all move around. Where were we when we were born?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, they could take you from here to, I don't know, Germany to visit relatives in minutes. Whereas, you know, we take 3 days and 6 planes.
Yeah, that's correct. We've been suppressed in
it's not really a problem.
Technology department. We don't know the capabilities of what these beings are really working with. So have you ever connected with any of your hybrid children that you've helped create?
Yes. This mothership visit, I got off track, sorry, I told you I would, was about meeting my children. I basically had an internal meltdown. I didn't do anything. I just thought, this is so not fair. Even though they're positive experiences, I grieve for those children. I've worked through it now, I think, and that's why I think I can help others. But I was just, you took my babies. There's no way I would have given them to you voluntarily. I'm telling you now. I fight and kick and scream, which is why I think I remember so much and fight through the anaesthetic because of the babies. So anyway, Grandpa Graham did allow me to meet them on the mothership and go and see where they live, how they live, and why it's all happening. And I hugged them. They were physical beings like yourself. There are 3 of them, and one of them at that stage had her own child. So I met that toddler as well, and I met her husband as well, all in the room. And when I hugged them, they're, as I said, they're cool. Their skin feels like it's tiny, tiny hairs on it, maybe like a mushroom, the top of a mushroom. They smell really clean. Really clean. They think we smell, and I can see why, because they smell really nice, actually. And they're really good at projecting their emotions. So you get to feel how they feel because they project it onto you. So yeah, they communicate telepathically and psychically, but it's more than that. I just don't know what other words to use. So they were beautiful. I still feel sad, but I pray for them, and I try and speak to, I don't know whether they can hear me or not, because I think sometimes maybe the telepathy, we all have a tracking implant, maybe it works through that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a spiritual thing, I don't know, but anyway, so yes, I have met them. And then Claire is the eldest girl. She's not on Earth, so what does it matter if I give you her name?
Yeah.
No one can track her down.
Yeah.
And she had a second baby about a year ago. And she showed me a hologram. She came into my room and she showed me a hologram of the baby. And I was awake. I was in bed, but I'd just gotten to bed. I was awake. The lights were on. I was still thinking clearly. And beside me appeared a baby wrapped like we swaddle babies, or we used to. And I just looked at her and went, I don't understand. I just don't understand what's going on. I've never had a hallucination. I don't do drugs. I don't have a psych history of any description, right? It was a hologram, I promise you. And then I heard her saying, now listen, it's just like your daughter-in-law overseas sends you videos of her babies.
Yeah.
I'm sending you a hologram of my baby.
Yeah.
It's just, that's all it is. It's just a letter. I said, can't you send me something I can keep? A photograph. So she wrapped him up and tried to make him look as human as possible. And it's that, which is why I thought it was strange. And he had his little hands and feet wrapped up, so he was short when they're really not that short. And his face was wrapped up, but he still had these beautiful eyes. And so I said to her, just don't try and hide. Don't try and camouflage. I think you're beautiful just as you are. But I didn't understand what was going on. So my first thought was, God forbid, I feel so bad. What an ugly baby. Then I worked it out. I went, oh, okay. They're beautiful. She just don't try, like it's like you try and make me look like something else, like another animal. It's just, you can't do it. And they don't need to. It's to stop us being frightened. I'm not frightened of them.
No. You know, it's funny that you say that, because I've seen with my two hybrid children, one of the females, a vision of her showing a hologram with a baby in it as well. 8 years away. Not now. She's not old enough.
Oh, okay.
And so it's really interesting that you've got a similar story with these children then going on to have their own children. Yeah, cool. It's so cool.
And a psychic vision or prophecy is a whole different thing to a hologram sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
And I understand the difference, and you obviously do too, but not everyone listening will.
Yeah, yeah. It's more it's a physical experience, isn't it? Yeah.
So I'll just go back to the mothership, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Which is where I met the children. So Graham took me into this big mothership. Now on it, first of all, one night I prayed and begged. So I'm talking to God and I'm talking to Graham, right? I was like, and I threw a tantrum in my head. You know, this is not fair. I'm just not fair. I don't understand, and I want to understand. And you owe me, and I want to meet my children. And I was really angry. And I think that's quite fair enough, don't you?
Yeah.
Rant. Anyway, so the next night I was taken. I was gone for 15 hours, which is the longest time I've ever been gone. I was really sick when I got back. But the interesting thing is that the ISS saw a big mothership on that night. And Chris Hadfield, the astronaut that was on the ISS then, I wrote to him, I emailed him via the School Ask Questions link, because it was all I could find. So he answered me. And I said, can I use that photograph for the cover of my book, and how do I go about getting consent? He didn't deny it. He said, oh, it's all over the internet now anyway. They pulled it down after that. Just do it. Oh, I just do it. But I got it in writing. He'd seen it. It had been photographed. And then a couple of years later, I saw him interviewed, and he said that they'd never seen anything, and he was lying. I know he was lying, and I want to meet him. Wow. Anyway, that night, that mothership I was on, and what it was like inside was I went into a small ship, which only would fit 2 humans and 1 grey, but it's really squashy on us because they're so small. And I went up into the light hole in the bottom of a much bigger ship, and I could see it really clearly. I could see what was going on. I was quite awake. I must have been partly sedated, because otherwise we throw up. And that's when I said to them, don't sedate me, they said, well, we have to, because humans do that in space. And some people are frightened and scream. We know you don't, but you do throw up. So, but I had enough that I can remember really clearly, like it just happened yesterday, or I had little enough. So we fly through the bottom of this big ship, and we park, we sort of dock, we just slot in, and somehow it's attached. We get out, and there's verandas and railings. And the first floor that we go on, I can see snaking walls. So I can't see around the corner because everything's round and curved. Yeah. And I don't even think it's just around the edge of the ship. I think it's like that. So anyway, and one of the questions that I had in my mind was, can I come and stay and see my kids for a couple of weeks? You know, they could do without me on Earth, and if they think I'm missing, tough luck. And he said, well, no, because you won't survive. But if you did, if we can work it out in time, this is our quarters. So he showed me in this bedroom, which was for one person, and it was round. On one side of the door, which slid out of nothing, the wall looked complete, and then suddenly a door appeared, which he opened with that same microchip in his hand. Yeah. So either side of the door, one side is just 2 shelves, and he said, whatever you bring can fit on there. So I'm going, all right, bad choices, clean undies, toothbrush. That's it. They're not into belongings, but I couldn't live without stuff like that. Could you?
It's a different type of adventure, isn't it? Going up to a ship.
Isn't it? And I'm thinking like a human, obviously. Yeah. So then on the other side was a seat at the door, and then under a window, which was oval actually, so it was rounded, but it was a bit elongated. I could see the stars. They're magnificent. You've no idea what they look like up there. And I could have stayed there looking at forever, but anyway. And I looked at the bed, and it was metal like the operating tables, and I thought, forgetting that Graham can hear every thought, that looks bloody uncomfortable. He said, sit on it. I sat on it. It was spongy, even though it looked like metal. It was comfortable. It was quite weird. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so that was the room, and then we go out back into the hallway and off to the left, and he opens another door, and in that door is what I can only describe as kindergarten, young children's school. And there was a young girl, a teacher, reading a book, and I was just gobsmacked. And he said, I said, but that's human. He said, yeah, we're teaching them to be human so they can survive on Earth. So that's right. Now, the interesting thing is, and I get criticism for saying I shouldn't associate myself, but the truth is the truth is the truth. That girl is the same girl that Stan Romanek had a photo of. Girl that was teaching my children. Wow. So that photo's in my book, and I don't care that he was discredited because it's true. And I'm another witness to the same person. Yeah. So anyway, it turns out she was teaching my granddaughter. But I didn't know that. The child recognised me, and we're like an old person with Alzheimer's there because they've sedated us and blocked our memory so much. Yeah. And she knew me. She'd seen me before. So then we go to the room where I meet them after that, but she's clearly met me before, and I realised that was her then. And then we get in. They have they're not glass, they're not perspex, I don't know, but they're clear stuff. Egg-shaped pod, which looks to me, best way I can describe it is like there's a scooter in it. So there's a little platform and a handle. And the handle's probably just to steady yourself because you're flying through your microchip. Mine's behind my left ear. That's why I keep doing that. Yeah. And he said, follow me. He got into one, I got into another. And I said, I don't know how to fly it. And he said, oh, you do. You've done it at home so many times. So anyway, I just found that I did remember when I was trying to fly it. Yeah. But again, it's technology. It's hooked up to your implant. You've really just got to think. You know how you lean if you want to go around a corner on a motorbike? It's a bit like that. Not the same. A bit like that concept. Were you fed while you were up on the ship for 15 hours? No, and I forgot to ask them what they eat. I forgot lots of things. Yeah. So I only know what I thought of at the time. Yeah. Anyway, so then we flew to another room, which was obviously high security, you know, just by the atmosphere, and other people couldn't get in. And I found that when we were walking down the hallway or the veranda, circumnavigating the ship, Grandpa Graham was nodded to. And I thought, oh, he must be someone important. And I was nodded to, and I wasn't someone important. So I was obviously with him. Anyway, so then he opened this huge door to this room that was multi-story, but no ceilings in the stories. And the walls were lined with what I can only compare to, but not the same, slides, lab slides. And he said to me, this is the DNA library of everywhere we've been, all of the planets, not just the people, but the plants and the animals and anything else that we might need. You know, and I thought, oh, it's like Noah's Ark, only it's super advanced. And he said, yeah, it is. It's exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
Because, you know, these people had gotten off in a spaceship.
Yeah.
And they hadn't taken 2 of every animal, but they'd certainly taken the DNA of every animal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's very interesting with everything that you're describing is what we see when we go to the ship. We remote view with our consciousness. There's nights that I do remember physical experiences, but because we're in this work and it's like everything that you're explaining, it's almost like
you've seen it.
Like you've heard all of our stories, if you know what I mean. You've sat in our classes and heard how we explain it and take students.
I haven't. For the record, I've just met you.
I know.
I don't feel like I've just met you. But
no, I know. That's the other thing. I feel like I have not just met you. So, guys, just to give you some backstory, when I was working, a week ago, I was working on the computer. I heard from my guides, go to YouTube. I went to YouTube. I brought up a channel. Jane's name got dropped on a channel that I was randomly watching because I got instructed to watch this video. I think it was the 3rd phase of the moon or something like that. Jane popped in and it said, go and find her on Facebook. And I'm like, oh, okay. Went on Facebook.
I'm easy to find if you want to find me.
I friend requested her and then private messaged you and you messaged me back in a second. And then from there, we just started chatting. That's how fast this was, right?
Well, that's because I got contacted psychically too, because quite often if I don't know the name, that's my personal page, I won't accept it. Himalayan page, yeah. So I got... You
got the knowing that, talk to me, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's absolutely. So cool. It's so interesting, like, to bring you on and share like with everyone just that story. And then now
I know
it's such a mirror of what we're seeing, and then you physically being up there and fully remembering this. It's so incredible.
Yes. And that's why I keep saying it's not an out-of-body experience. The light tunnel is not, because I've had a near-death experience, so that's another day, but the light tunnel is not that spiritual light tunnel. It's a physical, technological light tunnel.
Yeah.
The going through the ceiling, they don't change us, they change the environment around us. I don't know what they do, but we can go through it. So no wonder people think sometimes they're ghosts because they can come through walls.
Yeah.
Technology, not spirituality, whole different thing. Similarities, absolutely. Mirror, yes, but not the same thing. So yes, I was up there with my body, and I know that because I come back so cold and sick.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you get any
also
visual imprints from the trip at all? On your
head? I've had lots of weird things, not provable, but handprints, fingerprints on my arm, so they've guided me.
Yeah.
I had a handprint on my tummy once. 3 fingers, that's the thing, 3 fingers, no little finger, and very long fingers.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know if they have got an extra joint, but they're about an extra joint longer than ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was there any other beings aboard that you recognise?
Yeah. This is a fully running ship. People everywhere doing all sorts of jobs. And he said to me, all greys, but all different looking, all different heights. So I don't know, but I suspect perhaps the small greys and the tall greys are, well, they're on the same ship. So maybe they're the same race, and they're just like, we've got very tall people and very short people on this planet too.
Yeah.
So I went to another room though. This is important. And there were 3 very tall greys with robes. So I couldn't see their body, whether they were greys or not, their heads were. And they were also standing on levitating stools in 3 different heights. So whether exactly how tall they were, I couldn't tell you because of the robes and the levitating, but they seemed to be really tall. Now, and I was told they were like our judges or priests or elders or something like that. And they said to me, we do ask your consent when you're older. And I said, yeah, but you can't consent when you're a baby. There are people who are taken when they were children who aren't taken as adults because they don't want to be and they don't like it and they're terrified, so they just stop.
Yeah.
So there's lots of ethical questions, lots of moral questions, lots of breaches of moral code for me, but they're doing the best they can. And would humans do it in the same set of circumstances? Yes, they would.
Yeah. And at any point did you feel, they had ill intentions with you when you were taken? Was it always
never?
Yeah.
And never. They were always terribly kind.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm remembering, I get the feeling, because it's such a huge thing in my life. I'm able to put aside and have a normal life otherwise, but I'm retelling it, so I'm refeeling it.
Yeah.
So I remember Grandpa Graham going like that on my arm, I don't know if you can see it, when I was in pain, and he said, "Do you want us to stop?" And I said, "No, that's okay, keep going." But he would have stopped. No, the thing that I have an issue with is they took my babies. I do cry about that, and I do have nightmares about kids being kidnapped, and that's horrible. But my personality, and probably a lot of people, I can cope if I can understand. And now that I understand what and why, I do feel much better about it.
Yeah. It's always the knowing. When we are intellectually informed and educated, we can kind of settle in the energy and lean in a little bit more, right? It's the suppression of this information that's causing people to be in fear. So it's so good that you're coming out and you're like talking and making it more normal, because there's so many people that do come to both of us that are, like, it's like home when they hear that maybe we were involved in a hybrid program, because they felt like they have too, and their mind, their hormones are releasing in their subconscious mind, and they're finally starting to get the memories back. Because a woman at 30 years of age, a hormone is released from the brain, and the subconscious mind releases and retells experiences. It's actually a thing. So I think we're going to find now that women and men aren't going to get ridiculed. Now it's becoming, more evident on the planet. The governments are announcing, the UFO proof, and they're not really showing that much, of course, but they're admitting
but it's the start, isn't it?
But it's the start of like an exciting journey. Did you feel excited when you were up there, like, oh my God, I was on a ship?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's my, you'd be hyped. But hang on, you'd be hyped too if you were seeing this.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
Yeah.
Really, really exciting.
Yeah.
And no, as you said, no ill intention, none. They're actually really nice people. But remember too that I'm probably only dealing with, like, when we have astronauts, they're going to be the most educated, the most moral, the most checked out, the most psychologically stable humans. Well, it would be the same with the Greys. So I'm dealing with that sort of person, granted, but they don't, because they're telepathic, they don't tolerate anything nasty. You can't lie, try it. They can hear you.
Yeah.
Not that I've tried it, but you can't. So they don't tolerate that sort of thing. So as a race, and I don't like generalizations, but generally speaking, they're really lovely, lovely people. They're really gentle. The only word I can find for the way they express themselves is phlegmatic. So we're emotional. I'm hyped because I'm excited. That's a normal response for a human. They wouldn't do that. And they laugh at me. And I love it because they laugh with me, really.
Yeah.
Grandpa is always laughing at what I'm thinking.
Yes. Well, we're expressive beings, we're that emotional, expressive being. So feeling excited and energized and like lots of energy, that's a higher state of being. It's not a depressed state where you're low frequency. No. It's a heightened state of joy and fun, and like a kid, like that kid state. Yes.
And if I wasn't feeling that, you could say, were you really there? Because the emotions go with it. You can't.
Correct.
You can't make it up. And the part you can't make up the most is the emotions.
Yeah. So are you still communicating? Like, have you been taken to the ship that you consciously are aware of recently? And is there any...
Not in the last few months.
No? Yeah.
But I'm talking about months, not years. They'll be back.
Yep.
They will be back.
When was the last time that you were taken?
I was sitting on my lounge behind this computer. And I fell asleep. I never do that. I never, unless I'm in bed, I don't go to sleep. But anyway, I did. I was home alone, obviously. And I woke up and my feet were up in the air, that like really float. I don't have great tummy muscles, so it wasn't that. And I woke up and I'm half up and I screamed and they dropped me and I actually injured my ankle. What happened was, it wasn't Grandpa Graham. He's getting too old and frail now. I don't know how long they live, but he can't be young if he picked me up 60 years ago.
Yeah.
So another man came. That man didn't know me, didn't know my sense of humour, didn't know I wanted less sedation, and didn't have any idea how I would react. And of course I screamed. Wouldn't you scream? But it wasn't fear, it was startled.
Yeah.
And he left, he didn't come back. Whereas Grandpa Graham would have burst out laughing and tried again.
And perhaps,
so that's,
that Graham, he's, his contract's fulfilled. He's created and generated another generation of hybrids with your DNA and the Grey's DNA, and he's completed, that contract's complete,
That's true. He is, biologically, he is my grandfather.
Yeah.
Because his DNA was implanted into my father, inherited and implanted again into me. It doesn't matter who slept with who. No. I am biologically his granddaughter. So I actually have 3 grandfathers.
Yeah. And so did you get a test to see what DNA, what you held in your DNA? Was there some sort of testing process that you can use?
Oh, no. Well, no, but there's a funny story about that, around that. I didn't order this, but on my doorstep, couriered, not posted, from a NASA address, was a DNA kit. Free. They're normally a couple $100. I wrote to them and said, thank you, but I didn't order this. And they just said, it's yours, just do it. Nobody would give me any answers. So I thought, oh yeah, all right, I'll do it. Because I'm all over the place, all over the internet. So there's no way they don't know that I profess to be an alien hybrid. Okay.
Yes.
And it's on my heritage if anybody wants to match it or say it. So I don't know whether they're not going to tell me. Okay. But nevertheless, I intentionally, with consent, gave them my DNA, and I didn't pay for the kit.
So you sent you did the test and you sent it back to the lab? Is that what happened?
Yes, and the results are online, so anyone can check that.
But nothing, obviously they're not telling people if there's got alien in their DNA.
That's my point. As if they're going to say to me, you're an alien. Well, I'm not, I'm a human. But I've got some ancestry DNA that wouldn't quite match. But no, they're not going to tell me that. But they've got to have that information. In fact, maybe that's part of where they're doing it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I can't wait for the future for that to, okay, let's test your DNA, see what's in it, your Palladian, Octarian, maybe from the grey realm. Yeah. Like how incredible is this life going to be because this disclosure's coming out, it's so cool.
Exciting. And good exciting, not bad exciting. I think fear comes from Hollywood and all the monsters that are created in the alien movies, and it's just me.
Yeah, little green men coming out. So tell me, is there any other contracts that they're asking of you, like to bring through divine information, or is it just in the being and the doing and being that spokesperson and, standing in your...
They asked me to.
Yeah.
They asked me to. They said, we like the way you perceive us. You see that we're people. You see that we're loving, and you say that we're no different to you, and that's true. We'd love it if you'd tell your story. And I said, well, I can't. I'm like, I can't, I'm not up for the job. You are, just do it. All you got to do is just tell it.
Yeah.
So, and what's come out of that is all these people that have also come out, or at least privately, at least they'll message me and say, that's almost my story, or that's so similar to my story, Different people see different things, but there's so many similarities.
Yeah, so many.
Some identical. Some are absolutely identical scenes that they've seen.
Yeah.
Or they've had done to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes the only difference is I noticed with a woman that was probably a decade older than me, that her description of the light tunnel or the lift was completely different to mine. And yet I knew I'd seen her on the ship. And then I thought, oh, that's just the old version. I mean, we update our technology, don't we?
Yeah. And it's so funny because with that tunnel, I've been shown that tunnel. It's like a consciousness tunnel, and it can travel anywhere on the ship. So you get into it, and it's kind of like, you know, in Finding Nemo, how underneath the waterway, the turtles go through the passage.
Yeah, and that, you know what, that rings true, even though I haven't expressed that or even thought that. It actually makes sense.
Yeah, it's like that, the turtles fast track through to another area, and it's kind of like that tunnel of consciousness where it can go from one part of the ship to another. It's really beyond our interpretation, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's a really good point. And I do have something similar to that. I felt or heard or sensed, look out the window one night, and I looked out, and not far from my house, a white tunnel opened up, like Stargate sort of thing, right? A portal. But it was like, and I said this before, a camera aperture opening. It was like that. And out of it came a spaceship. And it came so fast, and it was plummeting towards my house. I thought it was going to crash. And it didn't, it just stopped. And so there you are. I did see some sort of a portal that is obviously a shortcut in space. I don't know how it works, and I've only seen it once, but it's what you're talking about. If a ship came through it, or could I have gone through it at times?
So what other UFO sightings have you had? What are some standout UFO sightings from this physical realm and looking up to the stars? What are some of those experiences you've had?
Okay. All of my experiences with aliens are physical. As I said, I could do another story on spiritual, so it's not that I don't believe that I do, but that's not what they are. So one, and this was a bit of a trigger for me, this is when I decided to not hide it anymore, was New Year's Eve 2011 to 2012 at Gosford Waterfront. There's a body of water there called Brisbane Waters. It's not in Brisbane, it's in New South Wales for listeners, but that's what it's called if you want to Google it. It's a hot spot. There's been a lot of UFOs seen around there. My granddaughter and I were sitting watching the 9:30 fireworks on New Year's Eve, and I felt weight. And so I did, and not like about a few minutes after the fireworks stopped, 5 red spaceships came in really close. Now, they're red orbs to uninitiated eye, but they're just a silver spaceship with their lights on.
Yes.
That's how they appear.
Yeah.
In front of us, in like an estuary of this body of water, was a police boat. And I could see police and I could hear them talking, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. So it was that close. I could see the policeman on board. They came down towards us, and there were only about 20 people where I was sitting because it was a side street, but there were thousands on the other side. So the boat obviously saw them. The radios went, helicopters came. There was frantic excitement going on. And one of the red ships sped up. They played cat and mouse with the police boat and the helicopters, and they'd go, and they'd stop, and stop, and let the police boat try and catch up. And in the end, they just took off, and I could see them laughing. I could see, in my mind's eye, I could see the pilots laughing.
Because that's that excitement that you were talking about before. That's the energy of sometimes of these beings. They like to have fun. You know, we're not serious.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's just great. So this is a good one, though, because then I got home and I rang the police station, Gosford Police Station. So, you know, I know they don't keep records, but this happened. The woman policeman that answered the phone said, policewoman, said, yeah, we know, we're not going to deny it. And I said, good, because there were also police helicopters and army helicopters there, and there were 5 of them, and I've got photos, and thousands of people saw them, and you just can't. She said, no, we're not trying this. And I said, well, do you want me to tell you exactly what, where, what time, show you my photos? No, we've already got it covered. So the police do believe this stuff.
Yeah.
They get too many reports. And then within a few days of that, I was driving down the main road at 10 to 5, so peak hour, daylight, it was summer, and stopped at a red light. On my right was an army training base at Erina. Again, you can Google these places if you want to see them.
Yeah.
And I and everybody around me looked up, and a police helicopter with a spaceship attached to the bottom of it, about the size of a small car but flatter, flew at the top of the trees, just over the power lines, that low, really slowly over us, and we saw it as clear as anything. And it flew into the army base on my right behind the trees. Now, I did everything I could to go around that base, but I couldn't find it. But I'm sure there are a couple of empty, mysterious buildings there. I'm sure there's all sorts of ways of hiding it. Plus, there's another body of water in behind there. But anyway, that's where the police put it. I feel sure, this is just instinct, not something that was said, that it was one of those ships from New Year's Eve because of the time. And it had just broken down in the bush and the police had found it, because they do break down.
And it's all hidden from the public. Isn't it crazy?
I know. But this was like open to, it's like, why don't people believe it when things like this happen? And they don't just happen to me.
Wasn't on the news.
No.
The media's not telling us it's true. Because last night we were laying in bed and I said, Pete, there's another helicopter we could hear. And we're rural, and I'm thinking something's going on because this is odd. They're all too low. And I said to Pete, you just wouldn't know though, because it's like a whole nother world in that department.
Yeah.
You know, us people, the people know nothing. And it's people like you and I that has to bring it out. So like, if you do have stories, report it, get it out, because it's going to have a better ripple effect than the media, you know, having their say and scaring everyone.
We're first-hand witnesses.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I reacted like that when you said helicopter is because almost, or maybe every time, maybe I'll leave out the almost, there's a spaceship over my house, along comes the helicopter. And one night I had a helicopter hovering over my house and circling it for an hour and a half. And I went out the back and stuck my finger up.
Yeah.
they took off. But it's now to the point, I live near helicopters. I don't have planes. You know, the Care Flight helicopter, whatever, it could be that. But you can tell. These are usually army helicopters, great big things, green or black.
Yeah, I've seen the black ones.
Yeah. So now when I hear a helicopter more than fly over, hover over my house, I go out and I can pretty much count on seeing a spaceship too.
Yeah.
So they know that our leaders know.
Yeah. And they must have the certain equipment to pick up the radar, because a lot of the ships that we are connecting with, that we've been had the privilege to connect with, they're always saying they're being cloaked. They're cloaking in just off in orbit.
They can do that.
And, you know, a lot of people, our students, they send us clouds that look like UFOs. So they're cloaking in clouds, like so many, over and over and over and over and over. And so they must have the technology. Our governments must have technology to pick up the radar. So you got to say they're pretty advanced in some ways, but they're not giving it to the public, you know.
I've seen them emit clouds cover that just goes around it. That's different. And then the clouds around it will move with the wind, but the cloud around them won't. Yeah. So that's one thing. When they turn their lights off and it's night, they don't need to be invisible.
That's correct.
To the naked eye. Yeah. As far as the radar goes, I check things. And I look at flight radar and things like that. Not every time, because it's pretty obvious most of the time, but yeah, I do. And they're never on it. Only the planes that are going past and the helicopters. Yeah. If it's right above me, it's not on flight radar. Yeah. So they do have ways and means, but I think that our Navy has ways of cloaking as well that we don't know. So I don't think that's too far-fetched. No. So but the helicopter.
Yeah, helicopters. I've seen the black.
Always over my house. And I had a neighbour once who was outside having a cigarette, and she says she saw a spaceship above my house. And I know that I went that night, but I didn't tell her. Yeah, yeah. And it's just another point of contact and proof of contact that this is real, this is happening. Yeah. That's right. Well, thank you so much. Do you have something to share? I've got a million stories, but I'll just tell you this one.
Yeah, tell me the one. I love it.
This was a triangle ship.
Yes.
And our girlfriend was staying here and we were out the back looking up, and she said, "What's that light coming towards us?" And I'm going, "Oh, it's a plane." "Oh, no, it's not a plane." So I don't immediately go to spaceship. And it came in really fast, stopped directly above the roof so that I could see with my eyes, like only meters above my roof. It was the size of the house. It was a massive triangle. I could see no markings, no windows, no bolts, nothing underneath, but it was close enough for me to see that if they were there.
Yeah.
And it went slowly down my driveway and allowed me to walk down underneath and have a look. And then it took off. And I felt like they were saying, "Go in your car, your car, your model."
Yeah. Isn't it
And they were
funny?
just coming to shore.
Because you can
At this point-
telepathically communicate with them if you set that intention, you know, and receive the messages. Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, this girlfriend had never seen a spaceship and wasn't sure she was a believer, but she was after that.
Yeah. How exciting.
So I mean, I could go on for hours, but anyway.
So good. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences. And everyone that's watching, Jane's actually written a book. So do you want to share about your book, perhaps, so people can buy it?
It's called, thank you. It's called Himalayan. It's available on Amazon, but don't be careful. Just order it directly from Amazon. It's cheapest that way. I made it so it would be cheap, or at least as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
And people buy them and sell them as secondhand copies as greatly inflated prices. They're cheating. So if you go direct to Amazon, Himalayan, Jane E. Pooley.
And I'll pop the link down underneath in the caption as well, so everyone can just click and go. I haven't received mine yet. I've ordered it, but hopefully, hoping it's coming over the next couple of days. Yeah, so thank you so much.
You're welcome. You might have questions in private after you've read it, and that's fine too.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the show, and we look forward to hearing more from you more in the future.
Thank you. It's lovely to meet you, and I do feel connected, you know?
Yeah, thank you.